When I work on watercolors, I like to raise my work up so there's a slight angle. So I'm using a couple of my own colors on my palette as well as the palette I showed you the other day. We'll use a mixture of the two. So as always, you need to have your colors wet before you start. My pencil lines are a little darker, but I'm going to leave them dark because I want you to be able to see the demo. And I'm just going to see, so if you put a little tint in your water, like a hint of yellow, you can see better where you've been. Remember, if you want to leave a highlight, you need to leave your paper alone. You cannot wet it. You need to just leave it dry, and that creates a beautiful highlight. I'm already thinking which way is the sun coming on my picture, because that will make a difference with a slightly darker side and a lighter side. So this takes a while, especially if you have a small brush, but by doing it slowly and accurately, two things will happen. One is the water starts creeping into your page, and two, if you're right on your pencil line, the paint creates what we call a hard edge. And you remember I said earlier that nothing in nature is outlined, which is really true, which doesn't mean you can't ever outline. Of course you can do what you want. But what happens with paint, with pigment in your watercolor, is as the water pushes to the end where your pencil line is, the water will push the pigment of the paint to the very edge where your water is. So if your water is right on the pencil line, the paint will create what we call a hard edge, and that's almost like a tiny little outline. But it's so natural looking, it's like a crisp little edge on your leaf or whatever you're painting. So if you know that, then you want to make sure that you are right on this pencil line, because you say, oh, I'm going to have that tiny little outline on my work. Okay, I see very few little highlights here where I've totally skipped. Okay, and as you can tell, it's already beginning to pull into the paper, because when you have a big leaf like this to do, it does start pulling in. I like the highlight I left there, so I'm going to pretend the sun is coming from this side. If I already know the sunlight is going to come from that, I'm going to drop in some yellows. Remember, we never paint the whole shape, we let it create itself. Now I'm going to go for some rust colors. I've already mixed them on my palette here, but I'll put them here, and we will figure out how to get those colors for you in just a second. I know we all have different color palettes, so do it however you want to do it. That's interesting. I'm going to go with what all right. So notice how little I'm putting in there, and then I just let gravity take it. I don't have a ton of water, so the water isn't going to flow right to one side and give me this huge bubble on this side. If it does, I'm going to turn it around. The cool thing about autumn leaves is the beautiful reds and purples and browns and burgundies. Every color I love is in these leaves. Now you may decide you want to try one leaf wet on wet, since you learned that yesterday, or you may decide you want to make one leaf wet and dry. And today I'm hoping to show you glazes. A glaze means a second layer, so even if this isn't vivid enough the first time, it's perfectly fine, because I'm going to come back into it with you and do a second glaze. Okay, so I don't want this to be the whole story. I want to have it develop slower. Now this is called an Indian red, so some of you may have that. The fun thing for you to play at home, even with these little kits that you have, is to experiment before you even start this lesson. So let's say you watch it today, and then tonight or tomorrow or this weekend, I want you first to play with these colors and say, can I get close to these colors, or do I not even want to do these colors? And then you make what you like, okay? I'm going for the deep purple burgundy. Burgundy is like a deep red. But the cool thing is with these leaves, everything works. Let's see if we have some plain old brown. I don't want to do brown too quickly. Make sure your paints are nice and wet. And always wet the block first before you start taking paint from it. If you want to make that a darker brown, but you can make brown by putting the 3 primary colors together. If you wanted to make it darker brown, you add some dark blue to it. And our little palette doesn't quite have the dark blue I'd like, but rather than add it here, I'm going to add the dark blue right by itself. And remember how cool it is when you let it drop in and create itself. I keep moving this baby around. All right, let's see what we have on your palette. I know all our palettes are different. This looks like a really nice brown, so I want to try that. Some of you may have different kits going around. Sometimes I like to save the original colors that are under here. That soft yellow, I kind of like that all by itself. I don't want to cover it all up. So I'm going to leave what I like. I am not stuck with any of this because this is just my first wash. So there's definitely some nice highlights, whether we want to keep them all. Now, do you notice how my brush is kind of flattened out? It's not round anymore. So if you want to make it round, you want to roll it on your palette. I'm doing it on my fingers, so hopefully you can see it. And if you roll it, you get a nice point back. You probably don't want to touch it because it has pink paint on it, but I don't care. And then you have a nicer tip to it, which is a beautiful color. If you felt like doing a green leaf with yellows, it's perfectly fine. Now my sunlight is coming from here, so I'm going to leave that little yellow tip because I like that, being a lighter side. And I went to the woods the other day, and the oak leaves had yellows and greens and rusts and every color in there. Okay, I'm going to bring a little bit more of this over here. See, as it starts to pull in, it still accepts more color. So this is called a second wash. And I'm dropping that in as it's beginning to dry. I'll take some dark blue. If my line mucked up a little bit there, I might change the shape. See, here I went outside. You can lift it off, but I'm just going to change the shape of my leaf a little bit. You have that freedom to do that when it's still wet. And I keep moving it so it doesn't look like I outlined it, which I did, but I don't want to make it look like that. As it pulls in, you will notice that the paint becomes lighter, because watercolor always dries much softer than you think. So if you think it's way too dark, chances are it isn't. You just let it dry. Okay. So this I like, but I don't like how sudden that's changing. So I'm going to grab some yellow and I'm going to feed it in here and go over that orangey line so it softens that, so it doesn't look like I just outlined it. I'm going to let gravity take it down. Take some more yellow because I really like that yellow tip. but because I make this yellow, it pushes the rest of my colors down. Okay, that I didn't want to do. That's okay. I'm going to show you later on how to get rid of that. Okay, see this little doohickey there? We're going to get rid of that. We're going to get rid of that, and I'm going to show you how later on. So this is a really good first wash of this leaf.